Up next, Donald Rencher, President and CEO of the Hudson Webber Foundation, joins Authentically Detroit to discuss the election, Detroit's housing market, public safety beyond policing, and expanding access to capital for small businesses and entrepreneurs from historically marginalized communities. But first, this week's hot takes from VoteBeat and Next City. Voter turnout was up during Michigan's 2024 election. Figuring out exactly why may be tough. And in the past 50 years, we've lost more than 150 majority Black neighborhoods. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages. Interested in renting space for corporate events, meetings, conferences, social events, or resource fairs? The Mash Detroit Small Business Hub is a 6,000 square feet space available for members, residents, and businesses and organizations. To learn more about rental options at Mash Detroit, contact Nicole Perry at nperry@ecn-detroit.org or 313-331-3485. Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from Detroit's East Side at the Stoudemire, inside of the East Side Community Network headquarters. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Davidson.
We are back. Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. We are so happy to be back in the studio this week with a much anticipated guest. Wow. This week we have Donald Rencher. Hello. The president and CEO of the Hudson Webber Foundation, here to talk about the election as well as some other very important challenges he's working to help Detroiters overcome. And so, for the first time ever, and we've been here a minute now since 2019, Donald, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you so much for the invite. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on. You know, it's been a long time coming. We're going to ask you to get a little closer to the mic.
Okay.
Maybe we'll have Griff come and adjust it. Donna, how is this blessed day finding you?
It's good.
It's good.
It's good. You know, I have to say that a lot of things happened over the weekend. One of the best.
Detroit was activated.
One of the best was the opening of the Stoudemire Park.
Yes.
That was really emotional for me. And the best part of that was actually not anything formal. It was when we were just standing around talking and you asked Ian Stoudemire what he thought of the park.
Yeah.
And he said, well, it's really nice, but I'm just wondering who's going to maintain it.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my goodness, out of the mouth of babes.
That's right.
He looked around and just wanted to make sure it was a great question to ask.
Great first question.
And he just reminded me so much of his dad. It was like, okay, Marlo
in stature
coming out.
and in question.
And that was just such a great question. So it was a great question for you to ask. Maybe we need to have Ian on here next.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah, let's get the whole fam. Come on, Valencia, Ian, Shelby. Yeah, this weekend was activated. You know, shout out to you if you went to the African World Festival. Shout out to you if you went to the Concert of Colors. Shout out to you if you went to Detroit Book Fest at Easter Market or Black on the Block at the train station. And it was so many more miniature activations. Everybody was everywhere in the city this weekend.
Everybody was not at the African World Festival, but that's a whole nother conversation. Donald, you said you were there. Yeah. You were there?
I was.
When were you there?
I love it.
On Saturday, brought the family out. My son got a drum.
Oh, cool.
He was dancing. He was we do it every year.
Did you see any of the musical guests?
I didn't. We couldn't stay out that long because we were out there for a couple hours. We saw a fashion show in that little zoo area.
That zoo area is kind of weird.
He's 3.
Cool.
So
yeah, but did he enjoy that?
Yeah, he loved it.
Those animatronics?
Yeah,
oh, my goodness.
Yeah. We had a good time.
Did you see Charity?
I did not see Charity.
I love her. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
I wanted to see Charity, but I had my future son-in-law had a birthday party, and so I had to go to his birthday party. Not David. Trevor.
It's a different one? Okay.
Yes, it's my
David's
bonus
birthday?
daughter. No, not David's. He doesn't
I
have more
normally
than
get
one
invited
a year.
to David's birthday party. I'm like, I know David have a birthday party.
No, this is Trevor. Trevor's birthday is actually August 7th, but
nice.
He had a surprise birthday party in Waterford. So
gosh.
that took us way out of the way, and I didn't get to go to the festival.
Waterford.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't visited out there, so I don't.
In Waterford?
Yeah, I don't know what
Yeah,
that's
I
like.
don't know what it's like out there either.
It's a drive.
With a pack of snack. Today was a good day. I'm enjoying the weather. But, I was sort of knocked down earlier today. I was in a meeting and got the news that Malcolm Jamal Warner has passed away. And I'm like...
He drowned.
And I cannot... I'm just trying to understand... I don't understand, right? And I audibly gasped and then just was like, man, I mean, we grew up with him. A lot of people grew up with him. I feel like he's family. So my questions are like questions that I would ask the family. I'm like, when is the funeral? Because I feel like I should be there. Yeah. Who got the body? And when is the reading of the will? Because I feel like I should get some of the insurance. Like he feels that close to us.
There was just a newspaper article this week talking about drownings.
Yeah.
And Lake Michigan having more drownings
it's
than
the
any
most
other
dangerous lake
in the nation.
In the
right?
nation. Yeah, Lake Michigan.
And they were talking about, boating accidents and how things happen so quickly. And I thought about the fact that I almost drowned on my birthday.
Like the recent birthday?
In 2020. Because I was in my cousin's boat. And it said it was a Stingray boat. So I thought it was going to be fancy. And that boat, we were on Lake St. Clair, and that boat was doing like this. And Kevin was actually having to lay across the boat to hold it stable. And there were no life jackets on board. So, yes,
that sounds like a recipe for
it
disaster.
is a recipe for disaster. Any disaster could have happened. And I was very conscious of the fact that I was out there in the middle of the ocean, of Lake St. Clair, not the ocean, with no life jacket. I think that we need to do more to educate people about safety, because I was reading the article. Michigan doesn't have any lifeguards, and I'm not trying to take the conversation away from Malcolm Jamal Warner, but reading about him drowning today after reading that article yesterday, that was so, it was a really good article about the issues. I think it was in the Free Press. We need, even a superstar needs a life jacket if in fact he was on a boat.
Yeah, we don't know.
And we all need to know how to swim. Hopefully all of our children are learning how to swim, because so many accidents are caused that way.
Rest in paradise to Malcolm Jamal Warner. There are so many people who are grieving the loss of this iconic actor, man. Yeah. I being one of them. Yeah. All right, y'all. It is time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. Donna, we haven't done Hot Takes in a while because we've been busy chipping away at our election coverage, so this should be fun. Voter turnout was up during Michigan's 2024 election. Figuring out exactly why may be tough. This is by Haley Harding at VoteBeat. Michigan ranked third in the country in voter turnout percentages last year, an achievement the state credits to major election reform and a strong voter education campaign. In a first-of-its-kind turnout report, the Department of State highlights the effect of recent voter-approved constitutional amendments, noting an increase in turnout between 2020 and 2024. Hundreds of thousands of ballots cast by first-time voters and the more than 1.2 million who took advantage of the state's new early voting laws. But some experts say the true driver of the gains was likely local election officials. Corin Smith, interim director of the Michigan State University's Institute for Public Policy and Social Research, said that research typically held that early voting laws often don't improve turnout much. About 255,000 early voters in Michigan hadn't voted in 2020, the report found. But studies have found those who vote early typically plan to vote in their election anyway, and keeping an early voting option open adds a significant burden on election officials. Measuring the impact of any state-level program is difficult, Smith said, because Michigan's elections are more decentralized than in most states. In Michigan, it's up to city or township officials to run elections rather than the county leaders. Local and county clerks did great work to educate voters, he said, but it's difficult to know how much of that came out of local budgets and how much was state-supported. The data in the State Department reported is still helpful, Livingston County Clerk Elizabeth Hunley said, because it helps clerks figure out where to focus their effort in future elections. But as the county's lead election official, she already had access to local and county level data. So some observers saw the report and its timing as a move to raise the profile of the Department of State and Secretary Benson, who is a Democratic candidate for governor. Benson, who is leading some polls, has run up against attempts from Republican lawmakers to paint her as a lawbreaker who has run flawed elections and has cited the conflict in their fundraising appeals. Donna, what say you, Donna? The timing of this is interesting.
Yeah, the timing is interesting, and I understand what she's trying to do. I don't know that it's going to help her in that in any way. And there's a whole lot of questions about early endorsements of one of her opponents that should be discussed in the future. But one thing I noticed is that Detroit voter turnout was actually down while everybody else's went up. Detroit voter turnout declined by about 2% from 49% to 47% in this last election. So it was never high enough. Certainly not as high as it was during the Obama years where everybody showed up. But so to think about voter turnout, I think there's got to be more than just what the election officials were doing. There was a lot of fear mongering, a lot of hate mongering, and a lot of the first time voters were voting for the purpose of being hateful, and others were voting out of the purpose of fear. And so outside of Detroit, I think the emotions and also the perception of really high stakes helped to drive it. I don't give a lot of credit to election officials. I think people vote because of motivational factors for the most part. And that's not to say that our clerk could not make voting easier.
Whose job is it to, get out the vote, right? To drum up support and excitement to get people to the polls?
I would say the people who are running.
Right.
I would say if you're running for office and you can ignite a sense of hope and possibility in people, they'll show up more often than if you don't. I think a lot of times politicians run to the middle. They want to run towards a certain type of voter and necessarily leave so many other voters out of the conversation. So why would people in Detroit show up in an election where nobody's really talking about issues that are very specifically connected to the well-being of Detroiters? And I'm not saying that having the current president is not harmful, but a lot of people didn't feel like, I think that hope is a bigger motivator than fear.
It certainly worked for Obama.
It did. Got hope. Right. And, and optimism and this idea that things can change. And unfortunately, Trump voters are very optimistic about these grand changes that they wanted to see. They were going to make America great again by doing all of these harmful things to everybody else. But at least that was a positive reason to vote. I think too often Democrats run on fear tactics and not vision. Mm-hmm. And in this idea, Trump is the worst person ever. And people are, well, you're not great either. I'll just stay home. So I think that what they were able to do, what Trump was able to do, because remember this election, he won Michigan, is he was able to ignite people's excitement to some extent because you had a lot of first-time voters.
Donna, you have any insight?
Yeah. Well, I was just listening to what Donna was saying. I think all those things are on point. When I talked to, I remember going to the barbershop and I was asking people who voted, and there were a lot of people saying they're not. Because I also think that many people don't believe voting is necessarily going to change their circumstances every day, right? So there has to be, like Donna said, that's something on the ballot where people understand, this is what I'm voting for, the opposite of fear tactic, but this is what's on the block to vote, right? This is what's going to essentially improve my life, and I feel like that discussion is rarely had, and that's why I appreciate the work that you all do, because I'm not a fan of debates, right? Because it's how do you solve poverty, and give me your 40-second answer, right? But more intimate, longer conversation. Essentially, what is on the table to vote for? What are the initiatives that you're trying to push? Let's stress test that. Let's really see if that's something that we can actually do. I think our Detroiters need to understand what's in it for their vote, right? And I not only is it on the actual people who are running for election, but I think it's on the community too. I mean, I think decisions are made by understanding what are the areas and who are voting for what things, and so people need to exercise that power.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that we have a responsibility to actually show up and demand something.
That's right.
If we demand something collectively, then we can monitor whether that's being done.
That's right.
I have to say, election reporting can be so disappointing. There was a report in Bridge Detroit Free Press and also the Free Press by Nusrat Rahman. Is that how you pronounce it?
Rahman, yeah.
Rahman, about housing and the candidates' takes on housing.
Yeah.
And it was so uneven. The responses, it was like, okay, let me go in very detailed what this person is saying in very shortened terms. So it's like, I feel like there's bias in that you're not really hearing what all people have to say. And I'd rather not see that, because I think voters have the right to compare positions, as opposed to, sometimes I think reporters have a way of minimizing what other people say. And so I think more long form reporting, I think the value of, and we had a debate, and I thought our debate we gave 2 minutes, not 40 seconds.
Oh, that's good. That's
a
good.
minute and a half.
Minute and a half. Okay.
A minute and a half, not 40 seconds. And people were able to express themselves.
That's good.
And you're able to hear, sometimes it's the quality of the questions. Sometimes it is playing gotcha instead of really wanting to have that conversation.
That's right.
I think it's important that we hear from them in forums and that you get to hear from them equally. Because unfortunately, again, a lot of election reporting has a tendency to be very biased.
The one thing that I would infer in the conversation is that everybody that we're talking about, especially like on part of the candidates, are talking to voters. And I'm really interested to see a candidate not only talk to voters, but talk to the wider citizenry, because we have the numbers, right? Everybody's not coming out to vote. There's a reason why everybody's not coming out to vote. And I'm interested to see and really desire, and I'm longing to see candidates reach out to the folks who aren't voting. I think it's really easy to get data sets that tell you where to go, neighborhoods to hit, people who are typical voters who come out in every election. But we have, our percentage in terms of turnout is in the teens versus everybody who is registered to vote in the city of Detroit. What about everybody else?
Well,
and how are you activating those folks? And I'm not seeing it happen.
I agree. Yeah. And I think every person who is eligible to vote should be treated like a voter.
Right.
So when I say voters, I don't just mean people who show up, but you make a good point, because a lot of times that's what people say, is that they look and they see in this neighborhood what percentage of people show up and which percentage don't. I think that if you are running for office to represent a community, everybody in that community should count. Even, children, even people who are not eligible to vote should know that you are governing on their behalf. And that's not something that you're always saying.
I mean, it could be done. I remember watching Stacey Abrams at one of the Mackinac policy conferences. She talked about her strategy on engaging the folks that are not typical voters and empowering. She changed the game in Georgia.
She went to the strip club.
Yeah, she was like,
listen, strippers, come off that pole and vote. Okay, I was like,
I was in that talking.
But there is a way to engage. There is a way to engage, and it should be done.
It starts with thinking. And thinking that people have value. It starts with what do you think about people? And this is for candidates who are running for mayor right now.
Do the hard work.
When you don't show up on other people's territory, in their forums, to listen and talk to them, then you are disrespecting the very people you claim to want to serve. Because we've had candidates who just consistently don't show up to any community forums. It's so disappointing. There was a housing forum, and at the housing forum, 3 of the top candidates were there. It was, Santil Jenkins, Mary Sheffield, and Fred Durhall. Perkins, Craig, and Kenlock didn't show up, and Kenlock shows up at nobody's forums. Craig stopped showing up at these forums. Perkins is really usually there. But it sends such a bad message. It puts such a bad taste in my mouth to have people not show up for us.
Yeah. All right, listen, in the past 50 years, we've lost more than 150 majority black neighborhoods. This is by Ileana Perozzo in Next City. So a new study finds that 15% of urban neighborhoods across America show signs of gentrification over the last 50 years, with the number of gentrifying urban neighborhoods growing sevenfold from 1970 through 2020. And that gentrification comes at a high price for black communities. While gentrification is still relatively uncommon, the National Community Reinvestment Coalition's new Displaced by Design report concludes its harms can be intense and lasting, namely displacement of disadvantaged and disinvested communities. From 1980 to 2020, gentrification impacted more than 1,800 downtown census tracts in major metro areas, with Washington, D.C., New York City, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Atlanta, and the San Francisco Bay Area topping the list. And I think we were all around to see this happen in real time. The list includes more than 500 mostly black neighborhoods affected by gentrification. Researchers found nearly half of mostly black neighborhoods that experienced gentrification in 1980 were no longer mostly black by 2020. Of those, about 29% saw a full racial turnover and became mostly white or Hispanic neighborhoods, and about 23% became racially mixed. In total, the data indicates a loss of 500,000 black residents in all gentrifying neighborhoods between 1980 and 2020. Here's the quote. So that's the level of displacement that we're seeing occurring, and it can be quite concentrated in some cities, lead researcher Bruce Mitchell says. He goes on to explain that the resegregation is something that we're concerned about, and the loss of affordability too. Gentrification can be different and difficult to define and even harder to measure. In addition to analyzing changes in income, home values, and college education levels, the study added an additional validation method. Researchers gauge changes in social class by tracking differences in professional, technical, and managerial employment, in the racial and ethnic composition of neighborhoods, and in mortgage lending activity. While the public often imagines gentrification as individuals flipping homes for profit, Mitchell emphasizes that this study is focused on developer-driven and urban planning-driven gentrification that can lead to widespread unaffordability and displacement. Donna, what say you?
Wow. I mean, that was a great article. I was glad to read it. I think it's important to understand that you go to places like D.C. Remember when D.C. was Chocolate City?
Mm-hmm. I remember when it was black.
Chocolate no more, right? And remember Oakland was our sister city. Oakland was so much like Detroit, and now it's changing. I think the challenges with that article, though, are that nothing changes overnight. And things begin changing before they become visible in data reports. So, for example, they show no gentrification in Detroit. Like Brush Park does not exist. Corktown does not exist. And in Corktown, black people were not displaced as much as Mexicans were. Remember, Mexican town now is majority white, and it's so expensive. And in neighborhoods like East English Village, which still remain majority black, but black people who grew up there cannot necessarily afford to live there as adults. And so you're seeing people being pushed out. It doesn't happen overnight. Renters can no longer afford to rent there, and they're replaced by somebody. And the other thing is that in a metro area like Detroit, where you have a pretty high number of, high wealth individual black people with money, it's just because some people are being displaced does not mean all black people are being displaced. So it's hard to track it purely on racial grounds. Sometimes it is just a different kind of black can move into this neighborhood than the one who was there before. So I think it's important for us to understand gentrification in all of its contexts, because I think that our current urban policy across the board favors gentrification.
I'm glad that you named that, and it was something that the researcher named toward the end of the article, citing developer-driven and urban planning-driven gentrification. And I think that we have to acknowledge the inherent racism that exists in the urban planning profession, right? And just how it coalesces and accompanies capitalism in a way that is violent in so many communities, and we have to be honest about that. We have to name that.
And we have the expert in the house right here, right?
Man, I mean, that's heavy. It's funny that you're talking about this. I was just talking to my team about this morning, and we know that Black folks in the city of Detroit, and we talked about this too, Donna. Like, my memories are coming to the city of Detroit because I'm not originally from Detroit. Was to come see my uncles and my cousins who lived in Grandmont, Rosedale, and I actually was like, oh man, I used to think Detroit was full of people of Black folks that were wealthy. Because growing up in Battle Creek, Michigan, I did not see that. But I also told you that out of all of my cousins, and my grandfather had 8 brothers and sisters. We had all the Renchers were in Detroit. I'm the only Rencher that still lives here. And so when we think about economic mobility, Black people are leaving. And there's a part of this where what does it take for Black people to stay? That's one part of it. But also at the same time, I'm very, very concerned about displacement. And so where areas that you see heavy private investment, what is it doing to our Black neighborhoods? And how do we make sure or ensure that our folks still have the opportunity to live there? And that also includes just perception, right? You might not be kicked out of your unit, or the rents might be stabilized, but when you go outside, are there spaces that you feel comfortable in frequenting, right? So culturally, do you feel displaced or gentrified out of your space as well?
Can we talk about the impact of next door? Which tends to really send all these signals out. There's 2 Black males walking down the street with shovels. Watch out for them.
Oh, I've gotten.
And it's like every time you're profiling neighbors,
100%.
and so it's like 2014, right after Super Bowl Sunday, and I was coming back from my sister's house, and I pulled up to my house, which was on a corner at the time. In East English Village, and could not get into my garage because the snow was so high.
Okay.
And there were 2 Black males walking down the street with shovels who saved me, okay? And
I love
was
that.
like, listen, you have to understand that when you see, and I wrote a Facebook post, I said, when some people see Black men, they see fear, but when I see Black men, so often I see salvation.
Right.
Like that one time I was driving down the Lodge Freeway, and I had a flat tire, and I had to get off and go to a gas station, and the brother pulled up and said, do you need help?
Some help.
Yes, okay. I think
that's
that
the Detroit I know.
It's a Detroit we know, right? And then we get told these other things, but when people start feeling devalued like that, when the rules start changing and people start calling the police on you, that's a thing. Yeah. But also rental prices are so high.
Can I just infer this really quick? Do y'all remember when Orleans Landing first got built?
Yes.
And all them people moved down in there. And I learned a new term from next door, and it was noise pollution. Because Jefferson on the weekend does what Jefferson does, right?
So
it turns up. And so it's like, oh my God, all of this noise pollution, and it's really loud, like on the weekends. And I'm like you moved to a city.
Yeah.
You come from wherever you come from expecting suburban living in an urban core.
I love how you did the voice on that earlier, though.
Oh my, do you remember me coming to you? I'm like, Donna, what is noise pollution? I don't get it. It was
remember they did the same thing. Was at Orleans Landing right on the river.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yes, Orleans Landing, not the. Oh right. Okay, I was thinking you were. Okay, I was thinking the place on Lafayette. Yeah, that was so hilarious. I was like, you all are so funny. They're like, cars are speeding here. Yeah. I feel unsafe.
And the music is so loud coming from the.
But that's what I'm
like
that
the
cultural,
lowriders.
That cult, like there's something about
there's cultural displacement.
There's a mindset around it too that this is violent because I agree. Having gone to college with some of these folks, okay, I heard some noise pollution. My whole dorm room hall smelled like a keg of beer, old beer. It's
noise pollution.
Listen, I had some friends who lived in Troy, and they had a party in their backyard. And they had the beautiful house in Troy, and they had a party in their backyard. And we were partying, and someone turned on the song, "Play That Funky Music, White Boy."
Okay.
And the police were there like 10 minutes later to shut the party down.
Like that.
And they moved back to Southfield. They were like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I can't deal with this. I think that the lack of welcome. I think that the profiling that some of our kids take. And so, one of the reasons I think we can get people to move back to the city is having lived in the suburbs and moved back to Detroit. I feel all the love here. I didn't feel it necessarily in the suburbs in the same way. Even though I was in a mostly black suburb, it still is different than Detroit. Yeah. Detroiters are more connected to each other, for good or for bad. And so I love living in the city. I think that people look at things like schools. I think people look at many things. And I think even the school data is distorted, right?
I do too.
And so in another life, when I was working in education, I used to run all of these reports on schools, comparing Detroit public schools to suburban schools, because I learned about how suburban schools have a tendency to track black students and marginalized black students. And so that the average ACT score at the time in Detroit was somewhere around 15 or 16. But the average ACT score for a black kid in most of the suburban communities was also around 15 or 16. Why? Because they put the black kids in remedial classes, because they put a lot of the black kids in alternative schools, which were really programs housed within a school where the data was reported as if they were in the same classrooms. And so you still have segregation. You have all of those things moving to the suburbs. So I want my people to understand that if you go to Cass Tech or you go to Renaissance, you're very likely going to get a better education than almost any suburban school. Yeah. In fact, I have a friend, and you know her, Orlando, who when her daughters were in high school, their father was arguing for custody because he said he wanted them to go to suburban schools. And I wrote a letter detailing all of that data, and she won her court case. So I'm an attorney in my other life. Anyway.
Okay. Donna has many other lives. Go ahead, Donna.
I was just going to say it's interesting because I know the planning department right now, looking at their master plan, are actually talking to young folks, and their number one question to young folks is like, do you want to live in the city of Detroit in the future? And what would it take for you to stay here? And I think that's a huge question for us because, we're bleeding our Detroit young talent, right? It's like, when I graduated from University of Michigan, all the Detroiters I know who were graduating with me, they wanted to go to Atlanta, they wanted to go to D.C., they wanted to go to Chicago, and to see the prosperity and the opportunity and the vibrance and the energy. I think Detroit has it, and it's like, how do we get those folks here is really important.
I think increasing perception of that. When 100%. People in Detroit became the Motor City, Detroit was a land of opportunity. And 100%. If it's not perceived of as a land of opportunity, people aren't coming here. The other thing I'm hearing from young people, though, is housing. Can I afford to live? I need a place to stay, a nice place to stay. So we need to do a better job creating housing that, that our students can afford when they graduate from high school.
That's right.
I mean, from college.
And
high school.
So much to be done. We're going to put a button on this conversation. We're going to take a quick break. We are overtime. We'll be right back with Donna Rencher.
Okay.
Have you ever dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Authentically Detroit Podcast Network is here to make those dreams come true. Formerly known as the Deep Network and located inside the Stoudemire, the Authentically Detroit Podcast Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your idea off of the ground. Just visit authenticallydet.com and send a request through the contact page. Detroit 1 Million is a journalism project started by Sam Robinson that centers a generation of Michiganders growing up in a state without a city with 1 million people. Support the only independent reporter covering the 2025 Detroit mayoral race through the lens of young people. Good journalism costs. Visit Detroit1million.com to support Black independent reporting. Welcome back, everyone. Donald Rencher assumed the role of president and CEO at the Hudson Webber Foundation in February 2024. Prior to his tenure at the foundation, Rencher served as the group executive for housing planning and development for the city of Detroit, a role he held since January 2021. During his time there, he spearheaded the coordination of neighborhood investments citywide, overseeing initiatives such as the Strategic Neighborhood Fund, Rencher's dedication to advancing affordable housing and fostering economic prosperity for all Detroit residents through strategic urban development is evident in his extensive 13-year career. Rencher's impact on Detroit's landscape is undeniable, having held progressive leadership positions within the city for 9 years. Notably, from 2018 to 2020, he served as the Director of Housing and Revitalization, where he crafted and executed policies and investment strategies resulting in the preservation of 10,000 affordable housing units, creation of 2,000 new affordable housing units with a total investment exceeding $1 billion. Before his tenure with the city of Detroit, Rencher served as senior counsel for the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. You know it. We call it MISTA here, further solidifying his expertise in housing and community development. Rencher's leadership and commitment to equitable urban development make him a driving force in shaping the future of Detroit's built environment and ensuring opportunities for all its residents. I got to say, I think Donald is only the second philanthropic president and CEO to join us here on Authentically Detroit. I don't think any other foundation CEO has ever sat across from us other than Angelique Power at the Skillman Foundation.
Yes. I have a question for you.
Yeah. Who wrote that, by the way? You get that from me? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Y'all did good.
I don't know if okay, that's good.
Sounds good, right?
So I was like, okay.
Were you sitting over there like the preacher?
It's all true. It's all true. But go ahead.
How many foundation presidents actually live in Detroit?
Oh, that's a good question.
You know, because when I talk to you, you don't just live in Detroit. You embody Detroit. You care about Detroit.
I really do.
And it feels different. It feels as though that has to impact your philosophy around giving.
Yeah, that's and I don't want to. I actually don't know. I don't think it's many, and I'm not trying to say their passion is any less different than what I have, but and truly, I'm raising my son, and I have my family in Detroit. I have a long history, as I said before, of my family being in Detroit, and I really care about it. And it's something when you have like actual personal connection to some of the issues that are affecting our Detroit residents that I think carries with me, you know what I mean? So I agree.
You got the passion, but you also understand Detroit.
Yeah.
You know us.
Yeah.
And it comes through. And a lot of people don't. They are really well-meaning, but a lot of people just don't know us. Because Detroiters, you know how we are.
Yeah, man.
We are a little cocky, a little bit proud of ourselves, because we're Detroit.
We love us.
We love us.
Yeah.
We loved our...
Everybody famous in Detroit.
We loved our black city. Okay, can we acknowledge that?
Absolutely.
We did not miss the people who chose to leave. It was like, bye, now we can live in your neighborhoods. That's why we all looked rich, because we were all living in neighborhoods that people could afford, places that ordinarily black people could not afford, other places in the nation.
Right.
So abandonment looked good on us.
Okay.
And I think a lot of us are struggling right now because of this feeling that we don't really matter in the same way. And I think that for young people, feeling that sense of I matter in the same way might be attractive, especially in this day and age. What do you think?
I think you're right on point. I would suggest that any leader who is in the business of advancing and helping our Detroit residents and our Detroit communities need to spend time in community. If you're not in our space, right? If you're not here, like how are you getting connected really, right? Are you attending our black spaces, our Detroit spaces in a real authentic way? I think people would look at some of their decisions differently. I feel like for me, I have a sense of urgency about the work. I'm still getting adjusted to the philanthropy pace. Because I know I don't have all the money in the world.
Because it's slow.
It is slow.
You're not used to that.
I'm not used to that yet. But there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of people that need to be supported that do great work that haven't been seen. But I'm committed to it. And but a part of that urgency is I'm in my own neighborhood. I used to, when I did my work, my grandmother used to call me after every city council meeting that I was in, and she would give me the business, right? And she's like, this is not what Detroiters are feeling. This is how you need to think about it. My uncles and aunts would call me and say, like, Donna, you're missing this point of view, or you're missing that point of view. So it's really important to get the voice of the people when you're doing this work. It really is.
Let's back up, because first time on the show, we read a little bit of your bio, but I would like to hear you introduce yourself to the listener.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Donald Rencher. Originally from Battle Creek, Michigan, on the west side of Michigan. My mother's side of the family from Grand Rapids. My father's side, everybody's from Detroit. When I went to college, my dream was to always live in the city of Detroit and build buildings. I never grew up with understanding how it's done. My mother was a renter all of her life. And so I just, from like the basics, I never understood how you do it, but I always wanted to invest and figure out how to develop buildings. That was like my thing. And so when I graduated law school, my first job at MISTA really helped me get a foundation of how you do this work. And so I've dedicated my life to really affordable housing. But then, once you do affordable housing, you realize that you can build buildings in spaces, but like that's not all it needs. There's a plethora of other pieces that you need to bring into neighborhoods if that's what you really, really strive to improve. And I could see myself getting away from just like, how do you build development projects? And so when I was at MISTA, I was doing projects in Cadillac, Michigan was the last project that I did at MISTA. Then I was like, I want to go to Detroit because I don't know where Cadillac is. I want to see the work. It's somewhere up north if you try to go up to Mackinac. Right. And I wanted to see my work, right?
How do you define affordable housing? It's such a controversial term.
Oh, yeah. It's easy for me. It's 30% of your income on housing.
No, but I mean, when we talk about building affordable housing, that's what makes housing affordable at 30%. Right. But when we say we're building affordable housing, I think there is sometimes the expectation that the housing is affordable to people who are low income.
Okay, yeah, and I hear you. So I've always had a belief that you need affordable housing across the income spectrum.
Absolutely,
but there's not enough. Well, go ahead.
But I mean, the data will show there's an oversupply of housing that's affordable to rich people, and an undersupply of housing that is affordable to people who are low to moderate income. So when you start getting to the lower incomes, that's where people find the housing shortages.
Well, I also agree. What I would say a couple things. One. If you're talking about regulated affordable housing, it's not enough to that lower income stream. It's just not enough.
Especially HUD regulated.
Yeah. Well, even naturally occurring affordable housing is disappearing.
Right.
Quality affordable housing is just disappearing.
I would say quality affordable housing is disappearing. And I was reading even last week a report that said 1 out of 4 people who can actually meet the criteria to receive a housing choice voucher. That means you're very low income. There's only 1 out of 4 people actually get that housing choice voucher. So you're talking about 75% of people who are in poverty have no housing solution.
Right.
And if you're talking about the city of Detroit, where I know there's probably a list of 20,000 above people who are on the wait list to get a voucher. The only other way they can get housing is to be in usually poor quality housing units that are not regulated affordable. And it's not acceptable.
Outlier just did a story on some folks who purchased or have a management company. No, they own housing.
Have you seen our story on blockchain technology?
Okay.
You can describe the story.
So Realty is a company that was buying up homes and units for cheap and renting them out. They're not based here, and they had a local property management company. But the other thing that they were doing was they were tokenizing stakes in the ownership of these homes in digital coin and selling coin to foreign investors. So like somebody in Spain. You haven't seen this?
I did not see that.
Oh, man. You got to read it.
Insane.
Yeah, yeah. Outliermedia.org. I'm always plug Outlier.
Yeah.
And nobody in America and nobody in Detroit was even eligible, part of their rules, to by some of this digital coin and this ownership, right? And so there are problems with like the dividends and profits being shared amongst some of these owners already, but the quality of these housing units are decrepit.
Yeah.
Right. And Realty would like to blame the property management company, but the property management company has submitted to us like receipts, like, yo, we are not, you know what I mean? And so we've been investigating Realty probably for the better part of the last 6 months, and story after story. The story led to Corporation Counsel launching the largest nuisance abatement lawsuit that the city has ever put together because of how dilapidated these units are. Right, but what it also speaks to a larger problem is that folks are so badly in need of housing that they are willing to stay in homes that don't have running water, in homes with holes in their roofs, without any real recourse or enforcement.
Well, two other pieces of that, though. Yeah. One of them is the most recent story is that Realty didn't even own some of the homes they were renting out. That right?
Part.
They were,
we found
and so
that
we have people doing that all over the city. But you know what happens is a renter's in a home, the home is not being taken care of, and they withhold their rent so that until the person takes care of the home, making a demand.
Right.
And the courts will not enforce a demand that you fix the water, whatever. So people feel helpless. And then if you don't pay your rent, you're kicked out. Even some people who put the money in escrow accounts are sometimes removed from their homes, and the courts accept it. Now, under Duggan's administration, you had the rental ordinance, and you had a lot of the landlords had to in the escrow position. But a lot of the landlords then said, "Okay, we're going to sell this house by way of land contract to you." Because it's the same home, but it's no longer a rental agreement. It's a land contract agreement or lease to own, neither of which has any regulation in the state. Right. And so there's always this way to evade it. Yeah. And you know that we have a planned land contract program, but it's a beneficial land contract program that will protect the purchaser.
It could be good if the person who's putting it together has a...
But we don't have enough laws
Professor
and
Eric
policies.
DeWicki talks about getting his home on a land contract. He figured it out. Yeah. So
a lot of, I mean, I would, when Detroit became a majority homeowner black city, most people did not have mortgages.
Yeah, but we weren't banked.
We weren't banked.
Yeah.
My grandparents didn't have mortgages on their homes, and I found that out years later, just like a couple of years ago, when somebody showed me the deed to a house, and I said, wait a minute.
Right.
How did this happen like this? So we know land contracts have always been part of our thing, but right now they're being used with the specific purpose of exploitation. And
I agree.
None of this happens. Affordability doesn't happen. Quality affordable housing doesn't happen for low-income people without government intervention.
Right.
What kind of laws and policies do we need?
So I could tell you before I left the city of Detroit, the one thing that I think is going to be transformational is that we push the payment in lieu of taxes ordinance. It's a part of the fast track affordable housing ordinance that just was passed last year, right before the end of 2024. And essentially, if you look at any regulated affordable housing where you get money to actually develop affordable housing, you also receive a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, which takes your property off the tax rolls and charges you a small fee, a service fee. And it's really a way to make projects more financially affordable to get done. And so now the city of Detroit has the ability to provide that same pilot rate to any developer who's providing affordable housing at certain income levels. 30% AMI right now is saying you're not going to actually have to pay any taxes at all. But to get it, you also have to spend at least $10,000 per unit for your projects. And so, from what I've understanding, that they just opened up a couple of months ago, and they've received over 250 applications. And I think policy-wise, because you're giving us a bunch of money, but you also have to think policy-wise, how can I increase the amount of affordable housing, quality affordable housing in the city? And so I think this is going to be a substantial change that you'll see in the city of Detroit, increasing affordable housing. But I think philanthropic organizations have stepped up before in the past. I'm hoping that they continue to step up. We raised $65 million to Detroit Housing for the Future Fund for affordable housing as well. And because federally, I don't think we're going to get a bucket of cash from the federal government anytime soon. And so, like, what are we going to be doing as the philanthropic sector to address this issue too?
Well, even as you talk about federally, what do you think the impact of the big bloated bill will be on the
huge
on housing?
Huge. They already put a 2-year limit on people who have vouchers. And when I told you before, when out of everybody who can actually meet the criteria to receive a housing Section 8 voucher, only 1/4 of the people who meet that criteria receive it. So now they're saying whoever receives it, you got 2 years on the clock and then you can't beat on it anymore. But the issue, because they believe it should be temporary, but the real issue is that people are going to be in poverty for a long period of time because we live in a society where we have people who don't get an opportunity to get that bite of the apple. And so instead of like realizing that we have people in poverty and we need to be addressing and helping them, whether it's Medicare and Medicaid, food benefits, like all of these sources of funds are being substantially impacted, and it's going to have a real effect in the city of Detroit.
You know, what's occurring to me listening to you talk, I could tell that you love talking about this stuff, that you live and breathe it, and you have gone from being, a practitioner in this space for all of your career and switching over to the philanthropic space. What was the impetus for that?
Man. Why
the switch? And how are you coping with the slow pace?
Well, it's so I loved working for the city and doing the work there. Sometimes it was tough, and but I had always wanted to try to really find my own voice and take the direction of where I believe that we should be doing. But at the same time, that a foundation has a deep history that you respect, and you're talking about new concepts and new things that we can get involved in. That part takes time. And so,
especially at your foundation,
for my foundation, it takes time. But I'm open for the challenge. But I think that was one of the biggest. Right? It's time to take a different avenue, so I could push some of the work that I can that I really would like to focus on.
Because you worked for the public sector for the first part of your career,
100%,
and now you 100%. Are in the private sector, philanthropic sector, and it's different because, some of those same things are there. But what are the differences, the positive differences about working for the Hudson Webber Foundation?
So I think, first of all, I think the board, I have a board that's, a brilliant group of folks that are definitely passionate about the city. And I like to believe that the team that I work with are all passionate about the work too. And we don't just consider ourselves as like we're giving you a grant and you're done and go by. Like, we're here to help, call whoever we need to help, get your projects and your initiatives pushed forward. And we actively want to engage with our grantees in a way. And so I think that's a fantastic way to do it. And I think, Hudson Webber's had a name before I came here. And so I think people, open the door when we come knocking, right? And we can have a conversation. And so just their history in the city of Detroit, I think, helps us move agendas and strategy.
Now, unlike a lot of foundation presidents, you are a member of the trustee board of the Hudson Webber Foundation.
I am not no longer. Yeah,
oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't vote.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was an old rule back in the day when there wasn't like a difference between the family that was running the organization and like getting a president and CEO. But it was interesting when we were talking about it. Like, I don't vote on any of the grants, and so that's the only thing that a trustee really distinguishes between a trustee and a regular everyday staffer. And so we just said we'll get another trustee to fill that spot.
There are a few things that Hudson Webber is known for. We know that you all are supporting, comprehensive election coverage.
Yeah.
But you guys are also have been outspoken about public safety and what it means and what it could look like. And I think that's a palpable and salient topic right now as Detroit. We're in for another Detroit summer, and we've seen curfews instituted for young people and, a task force really busting up illegal block parties. But I'm interested from the foundation's point of view, what does a safe Detroit look like beyond punitive measures, beyond the over policing or additional policing of our citizens?
I think that's a great question right now to Orlando, because I can tell you that I never felt comfortable around police until I started working for the city of Detroit, until I was like working next to DPD. Like until then, I was like, I'll pull up to a light and then I see a police car, I get nervous. That's
so what changed?
Like I think actually working familiarity and knowing the folks.
I know some police officers, but I still get a little stressed out. So it had to be more than just knowing. I think that was like we actually did a lot of work together. And there was just like you see that people have a passion in the city of Detroit, some of our police officers, and just knowing them, I just got more comfortable. I could tell you before that I never was. And so just when we talk about safety, I think from some people's eyes and perspectives, they're like more police, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how I feel safe as a Detroit resident. Mm-hmm. And so really thinking through how we support community, not only as a preventive through like Shot Stoppers or CVI, community violence intervention, but you're really doing preliminary work in the community that really knows their community better than any police officer would. And so knowing that, community policing is cool, but like knowing that we have a community-based intervention and strategy, I think is very important. And it's definitely not always calling the police, right? Right now, what I think a fascinating conversation that we're actually having right now is the over policing in some of our immigrant neighborhoods. I think about, right? Is like it's giving me the same over policing vibes. You know, what I'm even
saying?
the police escorting ICE.
That's what I'm saying.
Violating our, the ordinances that say that our police should not be engaged.
Right, and I think about how that impacts our immigrant community. It's when you don't feel
comfortable, psyche, our overall psyche.
You don't feel comfortable walking down the street.
What I think about is trauma. I think there's so much trauma in our community from all different sources, and we don't have a good mechanism for dealing with, mass levels of trauma. But when you have mass incarceration, you have children put into foster care homes and taken out of home, that's traumatic. And it's not the kind of trauma that goes away because you got a good education. It's sometimes for a lifetime. You're dealing with that. And then, there's so much research around, the impact of lead, the impact of toxic stress syndrome when people are pregnant. But we always look at public safety as something that police will resolve and not therapists, not, programs that just help people to cope. When you guys invest in public safety, what does that look like? Do you look beyond the typical?
So I would say three. So definitely CVI is a big thing. So we're a support of Force Detroit, who has done a fantastic job with their work. Mm-hmm. We recently did the co-response, so talking about what the behavior health aspect of things, and so we don't see police actually being put in the position to address an issue that they're not actually trained for, right? And so that's the Chief White, who used to be the chief of police, is now over D-Win, and so we're doing that. But my predecessor, Malenka Clark, was really, really focused on criminal justice reform. So she started the Michigan Justice Fund. It's at its base, at its core, equity is the biggest piece, and knowing that the communities that are highly being impacted by over policing or the criminal justice system are Black and brown folks, and so that's a particular initiative that we're really, really proud of and focused on, and want to continue their work to grow.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, what about small businesses? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Small business. You know what? We talk about access to capital. I come from being at the city. I have this real desire to focus on ecosystem change. It's
that
almost
makes sense
like
from your vantage point. Yeah, what you got to see.
Yeah, and so I mean, even on the housing side, Donna, it's like in Orlando, it's like you can give me all the money in the world. I used to say this to council members about like home repair. If you give me all the money in the world to do home repair, but like I don't have enough contractors, the process to take contracts through city council to get approved is long. And so when you think about small business and getting access to capital and all these other pieces, other resources to start, having POS systems and all those things are good. And there's a lot of organizations. MBBA is the one I'm a part of, and I think they do fantastic work. I still think about how many steps it takes to start a business in the city of Detroit.
Too many.
Just too many. Like that's what I think about. It's almost like you can put all the money into like capital and like other resources, but like if it still takes me 100 steps to go through the city process to open up my restaurant.
I saw Jay Rayford on Saturday, and Jay Rayford got a Motor City Match grant for social sushi back in the day.
Okay.
And he went through the whole process of getting the building together. And
how long did it take?
On Grand River.
It didn't happen. And so he just now is 9 years later talking about starting his own restaurant. I think it's about to open now. But the process.
Yeah.
Amina Daniels started Live Cycle Delight in West Village.
Okay.
And it came and went with the pandemic. We have so many businesses starting up, and they aren't maintained.
Right.
So what do you do about that?
So I think the first thing I can tell you is know that you're not an expert in that space. Like I know that I'm not an expert in small business, but I know that it's vitally important, especially if you have if you're starting to dig into like neighborhood investment strategies, because we have to have those core businesses for people to walk to and have those amenities in our neighborhoods for people to walk to. And we also want to see opportunity. It's our small businesses employ a lot of Detroiters. And if you're talking about Black Detroiters, it's even more significant. And so having people who are experts in the room, like a charity, and to really give money to put the battery in her back to help our small businesses, I think that's first step one. For me, I'm really going to be focused on the ecosystem change and building. Like, how do we get people to start their businesses? How did we get people to get connected to the city easier? Marlo Rencher is my cousin. She was actually doing the you know her, Marlo?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Every Rencher in the city of Detroit, or you see in Metro Detroit, is related to me.
And I be trying not to ask,
Yeah.
All of them. Yeah, that's so funny.
But she was doing Detroit Means Business, and all of it was about how to get connected internally to the city systems that like sometimes impede their ability to grow, right? And so really helping in those spaces. But I think it's critical for any neighborhood investment strategy and how you're going to work with our small businesses. And so, but I this is not the thing where I'm like kicking over the door and say, this is what we're going to do for small business in the city. I think it's really important to listen to our small business resource providers and understand they help you paint that picture. NEI serves as that purpose too. Mm-hmm. They provide funding to business resource organizations around the city of Detroit. Us. And so they're important to support. So we've provided them a grant. But that's how I see it. I mean, it's almost the lifeblood. I don't know the percentage, but I would bet more than half of jobs in the city of Detroit are or a small business.
Just imagine if we used our economic development dollars to help small businesses in the way that we do some of the larger billionaire-owned businesses, what we'd be doing.
I agree.
Another person who I think is a bright light in that space is Kai Bowman.
Kai Bowman, I know him pretty well.
Yeah,
I know him pretty well. Yeah,
we love Kai.
Yeah.
And the last tranche that we want to talk about really quickly is Hudson Webber's support and comprehensive election coverage. What does that look like? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, this is where I knew we were getting, and honestly, it's a muscle that we're going to have to continue to work on because there's a governor election coming up too. I think, for me, knowing how much the city of Detroit is the advancement of the city of Detroit is so connected to its government that it was like so many people were like, I even saw in the philanthropic space were so focused on the national election. Mm-hmm. And I was like, listen, I hear you. I hear you. And if, if a certain person is in the power, it's going to be, I hear you, it's going to be problematic. But we have our own election that we're not really being focused on. City council dictates and has the ability to choose on like millions of dollars and policies and regulations. And I just felt like it needed to be covered in a way. And Stephen Henderson is on my board, but I remember talking to him about just the amount of funding that's available for the journalists and news media just to cover. And I was like, what I'm afraid that it's going to be is like the quick responses and not like discussions to really listen to what the folks who are running for these positions are going to bring to our city. And I just thought it was really important. I think it's important to meet the community where they are and then get the opportunity to ask their questions. And to me, it was really important. Hudson Webber hadn't really done something like this. And I thought it was an important time right now.
Could not agree more. I think that I can't focus on federal elections because I feel powerless there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and so although, those are important, I think focusing and changing what you can and influencing what you can in the way that you can. Our people in Detroit have lived through federal governments who have not loved us.
Right.
But when we love ourselves and
Right.
we have people who are protecting us, that's what really matters. So
Right.
I appreciate it. So what kinds of funding do you provide for this? Is it to independent news organizations?
Yes, it was. So we provided. So Bridge Detroit was the first ones that came to us to talk about the idea, but they're really connected. I think overall to the I would say the journalism ecosystem, and this is where I'm looking at Orlando because maybe it's a different thing that I have to learn because you also mentioned Outlier, who I could tell you when I was at the city were like the best interviewers. I was like, how'd y'all know this?
I know.
I was like, how did y'all? Oh man, I don't know if I want to talk to y'all still. But
we're not your enemy.
No, never. It was never that.
Would you have come on Authentically of Detroit while you're working for the city?
100%.
Oh,
I don't. I believe in keeping it 100% all the time.
I mean, you're friends with Kai Bowman, so we already
that's
know
my
what
guy.
that is.
That's my guy.
We already know.
That's my guy.
Listen, we want to tell you. Go ahead, finish your point.
But no, I just thought it was important that we provide coverage in the city of Detroit in a real way and in a thoughtful way. And that was like the original conversation and to see what we could do. And I still think there's opportunity to even support even more, especially as we get through the primary.
All right. Donna Rencher, thank you for coming on Authentically Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
Man, we really, really enjoyed having you. Listen, if you have topics that you want to discuss on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and X, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. All right, it's time for shout-outs. Donna, you got any shout-outs?
I do. I want to shout out Janine Hatcher at Genesis Hope.
Let's go.
And Janine has been so steadfast in her work to develop housing and a strong advocate, a person who imagines the unimaginable. So she had a ribbon cutting last week that I was not able to attend, but shouting out Janine for making it happen.
All right, Donna, you have any shout-outs?
Man, I actually want to shout out y'all. I got to tell you, when some of the new board members came in last year, and especially the ones that were family from out of town, they were like, how do I keep in touch and understanding what's happening in the city of Detroit? And your podcast was the first one that I sent. Just so I was like, if you want to like hear what people are talking about, right? And instead of like cranes and like listen
hear
to
the
this,
real.
or hear another perspective
Yeah.
that you should hear. I appreciate the invite. I'd love to come back anytime you want. And thank you all for putting this platform together.
No, thank you for coming on. I'd like to shout out the whole squad at Outlier Media. You guys continue to outdo yourself. The Realty investigation has been nothing short of amazing. But this mayor's quiz got people in a tizzy. Like, it is...
Like, you pick out the things that you want, and then you find out who you like.
There's a questionnaire
I've seen that.
that all of the mayoral candidates took.
fire.
And then we asked people to take the questionnaire, and we matched them with, the answers. We matched their answers to the candidate who most likely matched with them. And so it's a fun tool. I think if it is anything, it's an impetus for you to do more research on the candidate that you thought about, or the candidate that you didn't know, was most in alignment with how you answered the questions.
Yes.
I don't think it is a revelatory tool
at
all,
cool.
but it's a cool tool and everybody's enjoying using it. And so if we can get more folks in it, keep on doing it, y'all. So with that, we thank y'all so much for listening. It was good talking to y'all. We'll see you next time. Love on your neighbor.